it is this notion that we are eternal. We are spiritual beings. We are eternal spiritual beings. We've lived many lives. We're living many lives, actually, because there is no such thing as past or future lives. Time is sequentaneous, as they say, simultaneous in sequence. And it's all okay. Whatever we seem to suffer in this life, there's no permanent loss or damage to the soul. In a lot of ways, this is, you could say, recreation, but it's also recreation. There is an opportunity to have some fun with all of this, not take life so seriously. And I believe we come here, the soul comes to the physical plane to know itself in its own experience. Now, we could do a whole podcast on that, but the gist of it is that we are here by choice. We came with a purpose. And there is something about this experience that we don't have on the other side. And it's related to contrast, to duality. In order to know ourselves as light, we have to experience darkness. In order to know good, we have to experience evil. And this is by choice. And like I said, there's no permanent damage, loss. And we're all kind of playing roles. If all our lives are lived simultaneously, then I'm living lives right now as probably part of the darkness in some incarnation, in some form. So it's looking at the bigger picture, and then embracing the opportunity. This is where we come to know ourselves as who and what we really are. On the other side, again, we can know that, but we can't experience it. The example that I use is, on the other side, it's like reading the book about riding the bicycle. On this side, it's not only do we ride the bicycle, but we fall off and we scrape our knees. And not only do we fall off and scrape our knees, but all our friends are laughing at us. We're here for the full experience of that. And Source doesn't really differentiate between good or bad. It's all just experience.
Peter Alessandria, it is an incredible pleasure to again spend time with you, to be able to drop into one of our numerous deep conversations of exploration. And I want to express my gratitude for being able to have this space with you.
Likewise. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So the question that I'd like to start this off with is, who do you think you are?
Wow, what a great question, Lelanea. That's a really good question.
Who do you think you are?
This is a really important question. I know you know that, at least according to me, because, whoever we think we are is exactly who we're going to end up being in life, right? So it's really important to take a look at that. And this is the question, that mystics have asked, who am I? And so the self-inquiry process is really, really important. So I'm actually a really good guy. I'm kind. I'm funny. I'm considerate. I'm helpful. I'm spiritual. I'm a very loving soul. And like a lot of us who are experiencing being in a human body, I have my challenges in many ways. But I'm grateful. And ultimately who we all are, I believe, and this is the whole point of my film, who we all are is this divine love, this divine energy that we call the soul, and my hope is that people watching my film will begin to embrace that notion as opposed to who we think we are, which is usually this body, all the labels that we place on that body, all the relationships that we use to define that body. I think we're a lot more than that. We're a lot bigger than that. And so I'm a lot bigger than I think I am. And I'm grateful to be here with you today.
I love your response. So what I'm hearing when you articulate who you think you are is I'm hearing some accountability and responsibility for how you're showing up in human form. But I'm also hearing that you recognize that who you think you are is how you're going to express yourself. So I'm seeing and picking up on the belief in the ability to be an observer of the self in human form. And then when you mentioned you're also spiritual, I'm also hearing that there's a part of you that's recognizing that there is the human self and the spiritual self. So the capital S self and the lower S self. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you'd like to say to that.
Well, where I go with that, and this is one of the things I love about your message, is the idea of oneness, this idea that we're all part of a greater whole, expressing in a unique way, but we have this connection and we have this divinity that flows through all of us, which is the same divinity, and my hope is that we'll start acting that way, because most of us don't see ourselves that way. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and Course talks a lot about this self-concept. And one of the things the Course says is, you think you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. Many of us have this very unpleasant, if you really think about it, self-concept. And, many people feel, and I fall into this camp, many people feel unworthy, not good enough, not lovable, and all of that. We're very judgmental of ourselves. We're very unforgiving of ourselves. And again, I'll speak for myself. I've been very judgmental of myself. I've been very unforgiving of myself. And it stems from this belief that there's something about me that's inherently unlovable. Now, this, I think, is a function of the ego, right? And what happens for me, at least, and this is actually, I wrote a book about all this, which I think this becomes a subconscious program that runs our lives. So there's something underneath everything that we seem to be doing in our conscious waking life that is running off this program that says, "Oh, they're going to find out you're not who you're not who you say you are. You're not good enough. You're not lovable. You're going to fail. You're going to be rejected." And here's the thing: it's not even that we're going to be rejected or not good enough, but it's going to be really painful, and there's nothing we can do about that. So it's this powerlessness, this idea that we don't get to determine our self-worth. Of course, that's not true. I'm the only one who gets to decide whether I'm quote unquote good enough, whatever that means. So this is a lot of the baggage that we bring into this lifetime and into our relationships. And as we mature, for me at least, it's been a process of undoing. I spent the last 25 years trying to undo the first 25 years of my life in terms of the programming and the messages I received. I'll also say this. I found that a lot of what was running me was basically the conclusions of a 5-year-old. As a little kid, I think we come to conclusions based on what we think other people think of us, how they're reacting to us. We don't have the tools or the ability to discern that, wait a second, if mommy's upset, that's more about her than it is about me.
Yeah.
Right? Because kids are egocentric, so we make everything about us. And what happens is when it's negative, a lot of that stuff is so painful that it becomes repressed. It's too much for the conscious mind to accept that we're somehow, imperfect or unlovable or not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff gets repressed, but then it becomes the subconscious, and the subconscious, I think, I'm not an expert in psychology or whatever, but the unconscious probably accounts for a very large percentage of our behaviors, of our reactions, and all of that. So the challenge / opportunity, and this is something that I address in my book, which I have a copy. I should have. Don't go away. Can't miss an opportunity, right? Right. So that's my book. Be bigger than you think you are, overcoming our self-imposed limits to have the life we want. And it's my journey, my process of undoing all that doo-doo that was running my life that I wasn't even aware was running my life. So there is this process of uncovering, and then kind of reprogramming, and then stepping into a bigger life. And so, for instance, again, the title "Be Bigger Than You Think You Are." That's kind of how I'm living my life these days. The fact that I'm directing this film and all the other things that I'm doing, way beyond my comfort zone, way beyond my self-concept. So expanding that and embracing that and walking through all the fear that goes along with that, for me at least, that's the way to have a better life.
Mm. So what I'd like to reflect back is I'm hearing that there's a great level of inner work that you're speaking to. And a lot of, not even a lot, my coaching business is centered around the inner work. And, I left a prominent and very successful career that wasn't fulfilling my purpose to move into the realm of doing the inner work, doing my inner work, and supporting other people to do their inner work because of what you are speaking to in this very moment of being able to go in and recognize the versions of self that have been frozen in time, the fragments that have been frozen in time due to traumatic events that have been repressed and suppressed and that start to reveal themselves in our mature adult lives where we're being ran by an inner 5-year-old. And that inner 5-year-old in its egocentric state, which it needs to be in, it's a part of the cognitive development of the ego, personalizes the events around them. Mommy and daddy are having a fight. Did I do something wrong? And we carry that into our adulthood. And then we start having relationships from those wounded states. We start trying to enter into romantic relationships from that inner state. And it's chaos and turmoil. And we're with another person that's also reacting from their own internal wounds. And then it becomes a shit show.
Welcome to my love life. Yeah, and it's sometimes it's worse than that. I mean, sometimes we're actually told that it is our fault.
Yes.
That they were upset, and when we're blamed and shamed, and again, from people who have no idea what they're doing in most cases, they're just reacting from their own wounds.
Mhm.
But what I try to do is just, and that's what the purpose of this book is. Again, and it's set up as a workbook actually, so you could do the exercises at the end of each chapter, because it really does take some undoing, and it takes some real awareness, working on our awareness, of what's really running us, and sometimes the inquiry is as simple as, boy, I just really overreacted. Why would I be acting that way or reacting that way? What is it about me that feels so threatened in this moment? And so ultimately it comes to changing our self-concept. And I'll say, one of the biggest things I learned in my own journey was ultimately, Lelanea, my sense of it is, it's and I'm sure you're aware of this, and I'm surely not the first person to say anything like this, but it's giving ourselves the love that we didn't receive as a kid, right, in those situations. And so I talk about how everything that I'm doing now is a result of me going from being my own worst enemy to my own best friend, finding a way to have a friendship, a loving, reparenting ourselves, if you want to put it in that terminology. I mean, it does come down, for me, it comes down to self-love, radical self-love and acceptance,
Yeah.
and really being our own best friends.
Yeah. I love everything that you're saying. It resonates so much with me. And I can see very much in your personal life, like having known um, a little bit of you as I do, between writing the book and also, being prompted to do the inner work and going from being your enemy of self to an advocate of self, which you've shared stories with me of what that looked like for you in your photography business and being able to like step out of your own way because you were the barrier of your own expansion and growth. And once you realized what that block was, you were able to lean into it and dissolve it. And then even practice forgiveness and surrender with those who were outside of you who were reflecting back those limiting beliefs to further support you in dissolving your own belief system, which was a block. And once you moved through that block, you expanded immensely. Would you like to share a little bit of that story? I think it'd be super helpful to some of the viewers.
In this often heavy human experience, many of us have forgotten that we aren't merely human beings reaching for the spiritual. We are spiritual beings navigating the human experience. These bodies, our brilliant avatars, are the vehicles through which consciousness explores space-time reality. But these vehicles come preloaded, hardwired with ancestral memory, nervous system responses, cellular inheritance, and stories written into our very DNA. Even within the fascia and the amygdala live the echoes of those who came before us, shaping our fears, desires, perceptions, and energetic patterns. And until we awaken, we unconsciously act them out in relationship with self and others. The software of this vehicle, our identity or ego, is also programmed. Family systems of origin, culture, society, governments, even pop culture, all have contributed to who we think we are. Humanity has fallen deep into the illusion or the Maya, forgetting its divine origin. Yet, across the planet, something phenomenal is happening. One by one, the code of remembrance is being activated, and people are waking from the collective dream, feeling a deep inner knowing that there is more to this life than survival and material consumption. And as we awaken, we begin to see how the self we were taught to be is not the self that we truly are. And beneath the conditioning lies the authentic self, the unfiltered consciousness that remembers its source. But to meet this self, an old version of us must die, the one created by programming, fear, and imitation. And this death is not destruction, it is liberation. It is the moment we reclaim curiosity, play, and the divine intelligence that animates us. It is where we remember how to live consciously with integrity, values, and boundaries aligned to truth, not conditioning. So if you're feeling the call to return, to remember, to rediscover who you are beneath the noise, I want to invite you to join my school community. Inside, you can access a 58-page internal systems workbook, a guide to reconnecting with your innate and authentic self, where you will be supported with free biweekly coaching so that you can remember, expand, and create from the truth of who you are.
Yeah, the subtitle of the book is Overcoming Our Self-Imposed Limits to Have the Life We Want. And most of us are limiting ourselves without even realizing that's what we're doing, you know? Now, it's I mean, part of my journey also is, many years in 12-step recovery. I mean, there's been a lot of different facets to it, but the gist of it was in 2008. I had moved to I was originally from the New York City area. I moved to Los Angeles to practice law, and I wanted to get a job in the entertainment business. So I went out to LA, and I worked in the film business for many years. Eventually had my own practice. And then in 2008, 2009, I literally lost my business in a matter of months during the global financial crisis. And I spent a number of months trying to resurrect the practice, but nothing was coming. And I kind of came to a crossroads. And the question was, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And while I had appreciated all that being an attorney had brought to me, it was never really my passion. And I just had this inner calling, and the question was, if I could do anything, what would I want to do? And the answer was photography, filmmaking, some kind of a creative career. Now, the problem was I had never studied. I mean, I picked up a camera for the first time in my late 30s. I had no background. I had never even taken like an art appreciation class in college. I studied law. I studied economics. I have an MBA. I have a law degree. I have an undergraduate degree in economics. I had no creative aspiration or inspiration really in my life. And yet here I am going to leave the law behind and pursue a career, a creative career. And that created a lot of problems actually for me. At that time, I decided to move back to the East Coast. My parents are getting older, and I don't have any children of my own, but my sisters started having kids, and I was constantly flying back for dance recitals and birthday parties and holidays and all that. So I just moved my life back. And for almost 3 years, I ended up sitting on the couch and telling everybody that I was going to start a business as a professional photographer and filmmaker, but not really doing anything. I just had set up some websites, and I did a little bit in terms of putting myself out there, but most of it was, playing video games, waiting for something to happen that suddenly launched my career. And after almost 3 years, the money started to run out, which was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because it really forced me to get off my ass, quite literally. And I had all these excuses. When I started, it was, the economy was still in the tanks, after the global financial crisis was pretty rough. I don't know if people remember that, but it was right up there, with the pandemic and all that. And I had all these excuses, but one day I finally realized, the problem wasn't out there. The problem was in here. Right. And I had this very negative self-image when it came to being a creative person. I was terrified of rejection, of criticism. And as a result, I didn't put myself out there, which is what you need to do, I think, to have any kind of a successful business, but especially as an artist or, some kind of creative person. So now the good news is for years, I had been studying things like law of attraction. I participated in all kinds of 12-step recovery work, and I was sober and, wasn't doing any of that stuff anymore. So I had a lot going for me, but there was still this last barrier, which was this really low self-esteem, fear of rejection, fear of criticism and all of that. And so what running out of money did is it forced me to start taking action, because we talk a lot about visualizing and all of that and affirmations and esteeming ourselves. And that's the first part. But the reason we do all of that, I think, is so that we'll begin to take action, to put ourselves out there. Until we take the action, I don't think it's enough just to visualize myself as a successful photographer if I'm not willing to call the newspapers to get my photos published, enter the competitions, enter the contests, and also find paying clients. And one of the first things I did, and I put this off for years, was I started cold calling. And I just got all the local businesses in my area, and I just started cold calling, and it was brutal. It was the most uncomfortable thing. And after almost 2 years, I realized, nobody ever hung up on me. People were so nice, actually. And I guess in some cases, they must have felt sorry for me, because if they weren't interested, they gave me the names of some of their friends or somebody else to call. But I realized it wasn't their criticism or rejection that was the problem. It was my own. Because at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of every phone call, I was silently beating myself up. Who do you think you are? Nobody's going to want to hire you. You suck. You don't know what you're doing. You're a fraud. All that imposter syndrome, self-hatred stuff. And what I got very clearly was that's what was creating the sensation of fear. It wasn't somebody else attacking me. It was me attacking myself. And that generates fear, and fear equals resistance. And resistance means we don't do what it takes to have a successful life. So it was putting those pieces together. And as you know, Lelanea, I went in a matter of years, really only a couple of years, I went from somebody who never won an award for anything in my life to somebody who's won more than 75 awards for my photography. I went from someone who was afraid to post photos on Facebook. Here I am, a professional photographer, and I'm afraid to post photos on Facebook, to someone whose photos have been published around the world, newspapers, magazines, online. Huffington Post did a piece on me. National Geographic featured my photos. All the local Fox TV New York, NBC TV New York, ABC TV New York, they all did profiles on me. They've shown my work. So millions of people have seen my work. And the only thing that really changed was, as I said earlier, I went from being my own worst enemy to my own best friend. I had to stop beating myself up. I had to stop shaming myself. I had to stop, because I would talk myself out of opportunities. One of the best examples, two good examples of that was, I wanted to get my photo in the newspaper, right? I had a friend here in New Jersey. She got her photos in the paper, and I thought that would be really cool. I wonder how you do that. And I kind of asked her, but the other thing was I used to view other photographers as a competition, right? And so I had this bunker mentality. I realize now that was just part of the self-hatred, not good enough. They're not going to like me. And I've really turned that around. I mean, I know every photographer in New York City now, and everybody on social media. I can go anywhere now and I'll run into people I know, and I have good relationships with all of them. We refer each other business, all of that. But I wanted to get into the newspaper. So I just ended up cold calling the local paper in New York, which is actually one of the largest papers in the world, and with terms of circulation and all that. And I cold called them, and I got through eventually to the photo department, and I got one of the photo editors on the phone. I introduced myself. I wasn't very articulate because I was actually kind of anxious, but I did the best that I could. I introduced myself, and I told her I'm a local photographer and I have all these great photos of New York City. Maybe you guys want to run them in the newspaper. And she was very nice. She said, sure. She said, yeah. She gave me her email address. And for almost a year, at least 3 or 4 times a month, I would send her a batch of photos, right? I never heard a word from her. I didn't even know I didn't know if I had the wrong email address. I didn't know if she was getting them. And about, after almost a year, I thought, I really realized, this is important moment for me, because my inclination was to give up. My inclination was to say, oh, she thinks you're not good enough. You don't have what it takes, right? You're not as good as the other photographers or whatever. And I thought, you know what? I can't have that mindset anymore, because I know where that leads. I mean, I really literally know where that ends up, and it's not a happy place. So I said, I'm just going to keep sending her photos until she tells me to stop, And shortly after that, within a couple of weeks, I got a call. I didn't even recognize the number. I thought it was like a spam call or something. It was her. She said, oh, we love that picture you sent in last week. We want to run it in the paper on Sunday. How much do you charge? And I was like, oh, fuck. What do you pay? I had no idea. I hadn't even thought that far. Like they were going to pay me to put my photos in their newspaper. And that was really instructive for me, because I didn't give up on myself, right? In the past, I would have given up on myself. That's why I keep saying, it's not just about visualizing success.
Yeah.
You have to act on that.
Yes.
You got to take the action. So, and then what happened was, Lelanea, she started calling me. Did you get any pictures of the storm over New York City last night? Did you get any pictures of the fireworks? It was like, it went from me not hearing for almost a year to now they're calling me. So that was very instructive.
So the story that you just shared is not an uncommon. We all have some sort of internal dialogue that, is self-criticism and wants to instigate these feelings of a lack of worth, because it perceives that it's keeping us safe. Moving into the unknown, being in the uncomfortable, to the nervous system and to the ego can feel unsafe. It's unpredictable. There's a lack of certainty, right? And so we'll even take on this energy and this language and beliefs and mindsets that are so incredibly hurtful and harmful to our own soul's expansion and growth, in order to keep ourselves small, because for some reason we perceive that to be safe. And what I recognize for some people, that internal dialogue, which is, programming from childhood, from like 1 to 7, and maybe even for some of us up to the age of 10, we're in a theta brainwave state, which is a very hypnotic space, which, children are like sponges. It's very true. And for some people, that internal dialogue is the dialogue of parental figures. And it doesn't mean that the parent is telling us that we're not good enough, but what we're hearing is our parent or a caretaker tell themselves that they're not good enough. I'm not good at this. I've never been good at this. I don't have the right education. I don't have the right certifications, and they'll go through a whole checklist of why they're not good enough. And when we hear that and we see them going through that process, we adopt that ourselves, and that becomes our internal dialogue and process. And what I'm hearing for you is you went through a lengthy period of time of deprogramming, which is the inner work, right? And if we look at, it's the societal indoctrination, which, many aspects of it stems from colonization and, stems from beliefs centered around religion and numerous other societal norms that really come together to create our beliefs, our mindsets, and societal rules and understandings. And you mentioned free will a little bit earlier. And free will is something that comes up in discussions quite a bit, especially with my clients that are in the spiritual community, because some of them really want to participate in a belief system that we don't have free will, that based on our timeline and when we came in, and even having contracts that have been predetermined in the soul space, the spiritual realm, that there really isn't a free will. And what I do recognize as a truth is that there absolutely is free will in the human form, the human space, right? And that free will is what belief systems I'm going to allow to dictate and control my life, being able to do the inner work and to move through these programs and to deprogram so that we can be the architects of our reality and the creators and manifestors that we're here to be. And everything that you've said, from your book, your experience, and even to the film that you're creating, is very much representative of that truth.
Yeah, well said. I agree. Yeah, I mean, we may not and often don't have any direct control over what happens to us, per se, but we always have control over how we respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the responsibility is, and that's where the free will is. And we talk in the film, we talk about soul contracts and agreements. We talk about the soul plan, the pre-birth planning, and all of that. And I'm, for me at least, I'm a firm believer that that is part of this experience. But you got to remember, that's also a function of our free will at a higher level, obviously. But it is apparent to me. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that, because I've experienced firsthand, making choices that are not really great choices, and then living the consequences of that. See, here's the thing. And I talk about this in my book. This is chapter 2 and chapter 3. So I define power, right? And so actually I talk about responsibility first, taking responsibility. So the first thing I want to say about taking responsibility, being accountable, taking responsibility for our lives, is responsibility is not the same as blame. That's the first hurdle. Because even, as a lawyer especially, but even people who don't have a legal background, we often equate responsibility with liability.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if I'm responsible for something, and we usually use that in the context of something went wrong.
Yeah.
There's some negative outcome or result. Well, all of a sudden now, if it went south and I'm responsible for it, then I'm liable. And it's just, for the longest time, I think I talk about this in the book, maybe I don't, but for the longest time, I could never admit when I had made a mistake in my life, because that just became more evidence of what a fucked up person I was.
Mm.
It was just more proof of my unworthiness to admit that I did something wrong.
Mm.
That's because I am equating responsibility with liability or blame, right? So this is the first thing for anybody who, again, if you read the book, my take on it is we have to separate out the blame from responsibility. And then the next step is understanding that it's in our taking responsibility that we get our power back. See, power and responsibility are actually they're two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other, right? As long as somebody else has to change for me to feel better, then I'm not in control of my emotional state. So good luck with that, waiting for everybody else to change so I could be happy or feel comfortable or safe or whatever. Now, this is not to say that other people don't act inappropriately. It's not to say that I have not acted inappropriately in my life, because I have. But I spent a lot of time in the book also talking about boundaries, healthy boundaries, because that's the primary way that we take care of ourselves in our relationships. So when I take care of myself, it doesn't really matter what you're doing or not doing. my emotional state is not hanging in the balance of your behavior,
Mhm.
because I'll have appropriate boundaries, so I'm not affected by that.
Mhm.
Now, again, I mean, this, it's very easy to sit here in internet land having these wonderful conversations. And I know in the heat of the moment, when you're having a fight with somebody you think you love or whatever, it's tough to kind of sort this out. But my big advice in the book is don't wait until you get to that situation to have this stuff figured out. Don't wait until you're at Thanksgiving dinner and, Aunt Mary is shaming you or whatever. Don't wait for that moment to figure out how you're going to respond to that.
Mhm.
Get a friend, get a therapist, do something, role play. The holidays in particular are a great time to do some advanced preparation. So if you know that you're often triggered by a certain personality, have a plan.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I just went to the bathroom, not because I had to go to the bathroom, but just because I had to remove myself from that situation
Mhm.
to get my wits about me so I'm not reacting. See, there's a difference
Yes.
between responding and reacting.
Yes. Yes.
So don't wait. Don't wait to figure out how you're going to deal with that stuff. And then, boundaries are really important. If you don't, and the more we think we love someone, for me personally, the more I need boundaries with them.
Mhm.
It's easy to have boundaries with a stranger,
Yeah.
Now, another thing about boundaries, two things about boundaries. Number one, walls are not really boundaries. Walls are
No.
walls. A boundary is permeable. It
Mhm.
lets information in, lets
Mhm.
information out.
Mhm.
Our boundaries contain us as well as protect us,
Mhm.
right? So they keep us from crapping all over somebody else's day,
Yeah.
healthy boundaries. But the most important thing that I learned, and this was the hard way, and this is in the book, it's a great story, is my boundaries are for me, they're not for other people.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Expecting other people to respect my boundaries is insane.
Yes. It becomes control and manipulation at that point.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's just another. I just have a fancy word for it now called boundaries, but it's still control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
again, we don't ever have to become a doormat for somebody else's inappropriate behavior. We can
Mhm.
do whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves. All right, that's never a question, right? But recognizing that nobody makes me feel anything. I mean, this is the war cry of the ego:
Yes.
is you make me feel.
Yes. Thank you. I
Now,
love that you brought that
sometimes
up.
it's oh baby, you make me feel so good, right? But other times it's I'm angry and it's your fault.
Yes. Yes.
That is the biggest lie of the ego. Nobody
Yes.
makes us feel anything.
No.
The challenge is, see, it's a lot more fun to blame other people, right? And but ultimately, it's not. Now, my first 12-step program was Codependence Anonymous. I was so steeped in codependency, I needed a 12-step program to get my life together. I had no boundaries with people. I was an approval addict. I would do anything to get people to tell me that I'm okay, right? I was a love addict. I had, love and sex addiction. I had no sense of self-worth. I was always looking outside myself to
Mhm.
feel good about myself.
Yeah.
Right? I had no idea that that was my responsibility
Yeah.
to esteem myself. And so my life was, there was a long path of wreckage in my relationships because of that. And it wasn't just romantic relationships. The story I have in the book about boundaries was a legal client.
Mhm.
I was codependent in my business relationships as much as my personal relationships.
Yeah.
And feeling like it was my job to take care of everybody else and to make everybody else feel okay,
Mhm.
ignoring the resentment that I was feeling because I was not being valued or respected because I
Mhm.
wasn't valuing and respecting myself, and the chaos that caused in my life.
Mm. So I would love to kind of move over and talk a little bit about the film and what inspired you to create this film. And yeah, and for the viewers, this is actually how Peter and I met.
Yep. So I don't really have a great answer to this other than everything in my life has led up to this moment.
Mhm.
So here's the other thing I'll tell people: if you're asking for some life advice, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Take what you like and leave the rest, as they say. But I found that everything that I've done has prepared me for this moment. And to begin to have gratitude for that, and to understand that even those jobs that I hated, in some way, they were preparing me for my future.
Mhm.
So if you're in a situation now which sucks, if you could still look at it as maybe there's a gift in this experience for me, there's something that's preparing me, even if it's just had to deal with people that you may not like, there's some value in that.
Mhm.
I'm not saying you have to be in a situation that's abusive or inappropriate or anything like that. And maybe the lesson in that situation is to get your ass out of there
Yes.
instead of, whatever. So with that preface, everything I've done has kind of prepared me for this moment. The other thing that was going on in my life, so I'm working as an attorney and then as a photographer, but for like 30 years now, I've had this interest in spirituality, metaphysics. I can't even really explain why, but like 30 years ago, I picked up A Course in Miracles. If you're familiar with the course, it's like 2,000 pages. This was before the internet really was a place to go for information. And I was just reading. I read that book cover to cover. I can't tell you how many times. I'm still reading it. I just got through it again.
Mhm.
30 years later. All kinds of stuff like that. I mean, you name it. I read it. I studied it. And the great thing about California when I moved to LA was there seemed to be much more of that going on. There were workshops, there were retreats, seminars. I got involved in this thing that was kind of an offshoot of EST, if you remember that.
Mm-mm. I don't remember
All
est.
kinds of. You don't remember EST? Oh,
No.
you got to Google EST.
Okay.
It was a very in-your-face personal growth kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Werner Erhard was the guy who ran it. It was part of the human potential movement, right? And so moving to LA, California, there was a lot of that. I got involved in that, and it was also mainstream stuff like Conversations with God, the Celestine Prophecy, actually, if you remember that in 1993. And I've come back to all of this stuff again recently in the last few months in some cases, and it still holds up. I mean, there was a lot that came out in the late 80s, early 90s that was preparing us for where we are now in terms of our ascension. And so I always had that going on. I mean, when everybody else was, running around, doing whatever they were doing, I was sitting home reading, Course in Miracles, the Urantia book. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Urantia book. I mean, that's another 3,000 page or 2,000 pages of, I don't know what. And I read that many times. Even, Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind, and then more mainstream stuff. So I always had that interest, right? And then in this is actually 2019, I think it was 2018, 2019. I'm doing my photography thing, right? And everything's going great. And then what happened was I injured myself in California. And this is in the book too, because this is how this book got written. I had a photo shoot for a client in LA. And then I was going up to Yosemite to do some landscape fine art photography, which is the other thing I do. And I didn't even make it to the park. And I was driving up there and I was close. And I was looking for a restroom and I got out of the car and I tripped. There was like a curb. I couldn't see it. And I caught my leg on it, my foot. I didn't even fall, but I tore my calf muscle to the point where, and if you've ever done that, it's the most painful thing you could ever imagine. And I couldn't walk. I was immediately rendered lame. And I had a whole week planned there. And here's the interesting thing. Now, you'll appreciate this as much as anybody, I'm sure. I had been thinking about writing a book for years because people were watching me, winning awards and getting published and all this other stuff. And I was speaking to groups of photographers and actually went down to South America. This is social media. Somebody found me on Instagram. They were the head of a college in Cartagena in Colombia, South America. They reached out to me and said, we want you to come and speak to our students, right? And at first I thought it was a scam. I found out they were legit. They flew me down there. Not only did I speak at their college, I spoke at 4 other colleges while I was down there. And I love that. I was talking to the kids, the people about how to pursue your dreams, how to follow your bliss, all that. A lot of them also just wanted to know what New York was like, New York City. So I'm doing all that stuff, and I'm thinking I got to write a book someday, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm too busy. I'm doing all this other stuff. So in the moment, there's a reason I'm telling you all this. In the moment that I tore my calf muscle, which was the most painful, god-awful thing that I could ever imagine, I heard very clearly in my head, now you can write your book.
I love it.
It wasn't even now I can write my book.
Yeah.
It was now you can write your book.
Yeah.
Now, today, I would say that was guidance. I would say that was my guides or whoever, because I wasn't paying attention. I'm sure they were trying to get to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it took something like that. And it turned out I was out of commission for 9 months from that injury. And it aggravated another health condition that I have. And so I was really completely, the night that this happened, I sat down and I started writing the book. And I didn't finish until it was finished. I didn't stop until it was finished. And so I got the message on that one. So the reason I'm telling you all that is during that time, shortly there, this was 2019. This was still before the pandemic. I read another book. I read a novel, and it was called Adventures in the Afterlife, written by a guy named William Buhlman. William was an instructor at the Monroe Institute in Virginia for many years. Robert Monroe.
Yeah.
Great guy. He had written a bunch of nonfiction books, but he wrote this one novel called Adventures in the Afterlife. And I knew a little bit about near-death experiences, but I had never really immersed myself in that world at all. And as part of I read this book and I was like, wow. I mean, it was really, even though it was written as a novel, he claimed it was based on his own experiences out of body in the astral planes and all of that. So in a sense, it was factual. And I read that. I was just like, this has to be made into a film. So I actually reached out to him. Long story short, I ended up optioning that book to turn it into a feature film. And while I'm writing the screenplay for that movie, I start researching near-death experience. I start just going on YouTube and I start watching all these NDE interviews, and I'm hooked. I'm like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. And then I started reaching out to some of the people that I saw on these interviews, and they got back to me, and I started forming relationships and having conversations. And then one morning, I had a call scheduled, a Zoom scheduled. I'm making breakfast, and I'm waiting for the toast to pop up. The toast pops up, and this idea pops into my head at that moment. I swear to God. And the idea was, you have to do a documentary about all this. Again, it was you have to do a documentary about all this.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh. And so an hour later, I was on a Zoom with Christian Sundberg. I don't know if you know Christian, great guy. He has pre-birth memories.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
He's all over. He's great. And I had a Zoom schedule, and I said, Christian, I'm thinking of doing a documentary. Can I interview you? And he's like, but I said, we're not doing webcams. You got to be on camera. And he was like, sure, but I'm not traveling. You would have to come to Erie, Pennsylvania. So I'm Googling on maps. It's 7 hours away. I'm like, I'll be there. Let's do it. And that was kind of the beginning. There was also a bunch of local people that I had found in that process as well. Psychics, mediums, people like that. So I had some local New Jersey people that I was already starting to interview. And then I went to see him. And that was the beginning of it. And I started finding people. And I have to thank the YouTube algorithm, because basically, I log on to YouTube in the morning, and all the people, people would be in my feed. This is how I found you. People were in my feed, and I would watch, and I would usually know within the first 5 or 10 minutes whether or not I was going to reach out to that person. And that was my criteria. My criteria was not what books have they written, not, what podcasts have they done. My criteria was, do I resonate with them? Do they resonate with what I believe to be the truth about our eternal nature as spiritual beings? That was a criteria. And so you'll see in the film, I've interviewed 60 people. I think I have the last interview happening this week. It'll be 60 people that I've interviewed, and about half of them have had NDEs. The other half are like channels, psychics, and mediums. And some of these people, they've written New York Times bestsellers. They've traveled the world. and some of them you've never heard of. And that was important for me because I wanted to have that mix.
Yes.
I wanted to give new people a chance to shine.
Yes.
That's been really important for me, is to give you guys, everybody, a chance to shine, especially people who are not very well known in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other criteria was, I would have again, like what we did, I would reach out, we'd have a Zoom or whatever, and I would know pretty quickly if they were going to be on board. And I put the invitation out there. And the other criteria was they had to, for the most part, they had to come to me. And as you know, I wasn't paying anybody's travel expenses. Everybody got paid a little bit. There was an appearance fee and all that, but I wasn't covering travel expenses. And that was for two reasons. Number one, I'm financing the whole film myself. It would have gotten really expensive. But more importantly that was kind of, if people said yes to that, I knew they were doing it for the right reason.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was really important for them to, which is what I hope the film does, which is to raise consciousness, raise awareness, be part of this ascension, empower people. And honestly, those were some of the best times, was the time in the car with everybody, getting to know you guys on a personal basis and all that. And it's been a beautiful experience, changed my life, and I have so much gratitude. I pinch myself, that I get to do all this. The other thing, again, as you know, it was really important for me to not sensationalize the near-death experience. I feel like that can be a real distraction.
Yes.
I went so far that the first 40 people that I interviewed, I didn't even let them tell their story.
Mm-hmm. I
don't remember this, but I had a list of 35 questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you're not going to tell your story. You're going to answer my questions. And then what I really want to know is, how did that experience change you? And what can we take from your experience to make our lives better while we still think we're here?
Absolutely.
That's really the whole point of all of this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. It's, as I love what you said. I don't want to sensationalize the dying aspect, right? The tragedy, the car wreck, whatever the scenario is, because it actually is a distraction from the message that the person is coming back with. And there are people who I think are more attracted to the drama aspect, and that is the drama. And when we remove the drama or the story, then what we're left with is really the depth, the message, the information, what is to be shared. And it's fun to have that context, leading up into the NDE and the message, but it's not necessary. And for the most part, it can be a distraction. And, what's interesting is, I had not been on podcasts before, and I did not speak about my NDE. I was not open. There is my family. So through the intergenerational trauma that goes back numerous decades, generations within my family line, which we all have some sort of theme, some form of haunting theme. In my family dynamic, what has moved through the generations, which I'm becoming a pattern interrupt for, is that there's an air of censorship because of fear of what others might think in terms of, are you crazy, right? And that stems from a great grandmother who was in, I forget what, not a penitentiary, but like a
asylum.
Yeah, she was in an asylum. She had developed a goiter through lack of iodine from salt, which creates some sort of thyroidism, which then affects the mind, right? And so in that era, we didn't know about iodine, and she was perceived as crazy, as mad. And it was a doctor who was kind of making his rounds and studying at different asylums, and I believe he came from the New Jersey area, New York, And he was a young doctor, made his way in, and he goes, there's nothing wrong with this woman except she needs iodine. Started prescribing her iodine and salt, and the goiter receded, and her wits came about her. And then she was released and recognized that she wasn't mad. But that haunted that lineage. And so there was always this air of like being very conservative on what you revealed, out of fear of people perceiving you as mad. And this NDE experience that I had, and then the mystical events that transpired afterwards, was something that I thought was just for me, that I wasn't to share. And it took my awakening and an egoic death and, really huge transitions in my life to realize that absolutely not. And it took the mystical event of oneness to happen to me to recognize that everyone around me is a reflection of me. I'm connected to everyone. And as I share this information, I'm actually supporting the other fragments of source. And so when you contacted me, it was one of the first experiences. I just started talking about my experience. And what I can say is about these podcasts, they're very infamous right now. They're very, people really flock to these. They get a lot of viewings, and it wasn't this way before. This is a new paradigm that we're in. And there is a great deal of sensationalism that I'm recognizing that is occurring, where we're losing the quality of the message because of sensationalism, which means it's also the quality is being watered down a little bit. And when you invited me, I looked, I wanted to know who some of the people were that you were bringing onto the show and interviewing, because I wanted to make sure I was in alignment. And based off of the names that you had told me, which Christian was one of them, Bashar, numerous others, that were people who I respected and who also resonated to me as bringers of truth. So there definitely was a resonance there that allowed me to feel safe in telling my story with you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. You guys are the heroes. I got to be honest with you. Anybody who's willing, and some people have been telling their story for 15 years, right? And from what I can tell, most of you guys are not getting rich off of this.
No.
And it's worse than that, because a lot of you get all kinds of pushback, especially on social media, people taking shots at you or whatever. And so my observation is that people who are really willing to tell their story in this way, they really are doing it for the right reason, which is they want to help humanity. They want to help all of us expand our consciousness. Now, I don't have a problem if people want to sensationalize. I'm more interested in people watching something that gives them a new perspective of themselves and of who we are as spiritual beings. So if it has to be through that avenue where you have the thumbnail with, she died and went to heaven and, in a car accident, okay, if that's, that's not how I choose to do it. But now that's another reason I haven't gone anywhere for financing for this, because having worked in Hollywood for 20 years, I'm pretty sure that if I took this to a studio or a streaming service, they would want to make it something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm fortunate that I have the skill. Now I'm doing I'm doing all this myself. I'm doing all the production, all the editing, all the marketing, all the social media. I'm doing all of it. But luckily I have the skill set to be able to do that. And here's the other thing. So if people are interested right now, you could see Lelanea's full interview. We're only going to show a little clip here, but Lelanea's full interview is available on the film's website, which is everysoulknows.com, and on the film YouTube channel, which is at What Every Soul Knows. And it was really important for me to make available to everybody for free the full interviews of the 60 people that I've interviewed. So there's about 55 of them up there so far. And for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to honor the people who honored me by coming to be interviewed, because most people only get a few minutes in the final film. But the average interview was close to an hour, give or take 45 minutes to an hour. So I wanted their voices to be heard, right? So the full interviews are up there. And for the audience, I wanted to create a resource, right? So after they watch the film, they say, I want to find out more about Lelanea or whoever. They can go right to the website. They can go to the YouTube channel. I even cut out the ads. There's no mid-roll YouTube ads to interrupt you while you're watching these interviews, because I really felt and my thing has been, this is kind of like Afterlife 101. This film is for people who may never have heard of an NDE. We did a screening in Ireland in November. Long story how that came about, but people showed up from the local community there. They had no idea what they were coming to see, right? And about half of them stuck around afterwards for a Q&A because they had all these questions, right? So I really wanted this to be as accessible. I wanted to create a resource for people where they could go. And now people are binge watching all these videos from the film. And the best part of my day so far, because the film is not actually released yet, is when I wake up, in my inbox, there are comments from people who have watched the videos, and 99% of them have been, somebody commented today, she was so grateful that all this information was available in one place for her to answer her questions.
Oh, wow.
Because these 35 questions, these are the questions that everybody seems to have. What is the soul? Is reincarnation a thing? Is there such a thing as hell? What's heaven? What's God? Do we have soul contracts and agreements? You can go on the website, everysoulknows.com. You can see all the questions. They're listed there. So this was my thing, is I wanted to create this resource for people. Again, I wanted your voice to be heard, because you have 9 minutes in the final film. Most people that came only got 3 or 4 minutes at the most, probably less. So I wanted everybody's voice to be heard. So you can go right now, as I said, all the interviews are up there. And then when the film is finished, it's going to be important to me, not doing this for the money. Now, I'm not going to say no to money, believe me, and I want to get my money back because I invested all my money in this, but I trust that that's going to come back. So I'm not going for the Netflix deal. Now, if Netflix comes to me and they say they want it, I will say yes, but it has to be non-exclusive, meaning I don't want people to have to subscribe to any particular streaming service just to see this film.
Yeah.
It has to be widely available, and it has to be available everywhere.
Yeah.
If they want it, Netflix, if you're watching, if you want it for 2 weeks exclusively, we'll do that deal. And remember, I said earlier, everything is preparing us for what we're doing now. I spent 20 years as an entertainment attorney, so I know what those deals look like.
Yeah.
Right? So if they want it for 2 weeks exclusive, fine. But after that, it's got to be available everywhere.
Yeah.
And I may even just do pay-per-view on my website, pay-per-view on YouTube, $3 or $4, because I want people to see this. I feel like it could be really helpful for a lot of people. And that has been the response. The biggest litmus test for me so far is my 18-year-old niece. She I love this kid. I'm re-experiencing a lot of my childhood through her. But her thing, and she's more than this, so I want to be careful how I say this, but her thing is, Instagram and who's dating who and who's wearing what, and, and all of that. And she watched one of the previews and she was like, wow, this is amazing. And she's coming to the screening this week with her friends. She's bringing all her friends. So if I can reach her, then I feel like I can reach almost anybody. And again, it's not any comment on her.
Yeah.
It's just, a lot of people are not. And when I was 18, believe me, I wouldn't even gone to my uncle's.
Yeah.
I would have been like, yeah, whatever. I wouldn't even gone to watch the movie. At least she watched it. But my point is, I feel like, this has a potential to help wake people up. Now, this is the last thing I'll say. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything with this, right? Because the truth is, until we have our own experience, which either happens while we're still in the body or after we leave the body, none of us is really going to know for sure anyway, right? I believe every word of the people that I've interviewed, but I'm also aware that there may be people out there who are just, looking for attention or whatever they're doing. So we have to use discretion. But I do feel like, and this is I think what's unique about the film, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but I actually stopped the film at least 3 times and have a 2-minute guided meditation for the audience. And during that meditation, I say, okay, you've heard from everybody else on this subject. Now, what's your truth? Right? And I say, this is the time to go within. This is the time to seek your own inner wisdom and your own highest truth. Don't take anybody, right at the beginning, after we record this, I'm going to do this tomorrow. But right at the beginning, I say, don't take anybody's word for anything in this film or in your life in general. Instead, use everything that you see and hear in this film as a springboard to discover your own inner wisdom and your own highest truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how we use discernment, right? Is how does this feel? What is the frequency of the vibration of this? Is this of a resonance? And to really feel if something is of a resonance is to remove ourselves from the mind and sit in our heart brain and our gut brain and really feel this information. And we will know kinetically, we will know, whoa, this doesn't feel in alignment. I'm not going to judge it, but I'm just going to move away from it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I have, Lelanea. I have not had a near-death experience. I haven't even, other than what I described earlier, like with the book, there's one other experience I had, but I haven't had an NDE. I'm going based on my intuitive knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really my own intuitive, this is true. The other thing that happened, I think you remember this, is in the middle of all this, my younger brother passed away.
Yeah.
And completely unexpected and completely devastating. It was brutal. I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of this film. And it was this film that helped me get through that. But it also pushed me to the point where I had to make a decision, right? Do I really believe this stuff?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Because he's gone. He's dead. He's gone.
Yeah.
He ain't coming back in this world, at least.
Yeah.
And I really had to come to that point, because here I am telling the world that we are eternal spiritual beings. Life is eternal. There is no death. We're not our bodies. And he's gone. And I wanted to shoot myself. I mean, it hurt so much. The pain was I had all these regrets about the relationship, my younger brother, all that I could have done for him that I didn't do, all of that.
Yeah.
And I almost stepped away from the film because at first I was like, fuck all of this.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no. And then since then he's come through with a bunch of the mediums that I've interviewed. They're like, well, there's somebody here. His name starts with a J. Does that mean anything to you? And I'm interviewing for the film. I'm not there for a reading.
Yeah.
And now I'm dedicating the film to him. And I actually laugh a little bit about that now because he was pretty much a firm non-believer in the afterlife. He was a hardcore New Yorker, tough guy. And as far as I know, I hadn't seen him in 2 years. We weren't estranged or anything like that, but we weren't as close as we could have been. He had moved to Florida from New York, so I hadn't seen him. I had this urge to go visit him. So I reached out to him. I said, I'd like to come down. I haven't seen your place. We can hang out. So I went down there for a week. And while I was there, I already started working on the film. And I'm watching my iPad or whatever, and I'm watching somebody's NDE story, right? And he overhears it, and he says, turn that shit off. You don't really believe that stuff, do you? So that was his attitude about all this. 2 weeks later, I come back to New Jersey. 2 weeks later, he dies. So I had just seen him, and so now I'm smiling about it because I was with a medium. Actually, I was with a medium when the news came through about him. My phone was ringing. It was vibrating, and she was like, "Maybe you want to answer your phone." I was like, "No, I don't have to answer it." She said, "You really have to answer your phone." And when I answered it, it was my sister calling me to tell me that my brother had passed. And so it's been this weird thing now where he's part of this, and I'm kind of laughing, and I feel like this was part of our soul's plan. because it really pushed me to make that decision. Do you really believe this stuff?
Yeah. 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 What I'm hearing is there's some synchronicities and some divine movement within all of this. And that's coming up for you and intuitively supporting you and recognizing that you're on the path and you're where you're supposed to be.
But the other thing that I did at some point was I said, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was basically, thy will be done. How can I be of service? What can I do? And of course, in Miracles talks about playing our part in God's plan for salvation. So I offered myself to Source, and I just said, okay, use me. Because I spent years trying to make stuff happen, and it was always didn't. Oh, even though I achieved a lot along the way, it was often at a great cost, exhaustion, all that other stuff. This is not that, and I think a lot of it was just offering myself to be of service.
Absolutely. I completely resonate with that. And when I feel like I am trying to manipulate, control, maneuver, and create the path physically with exertion, I allow myself to surrender, like meditate, surrender, and recognize why am I trying to control this and maneuver and dictate, and then offer myself to Source and say, use me, let me be of service, because I know that if I'm of service to that which is greater than myself, that the path will find me. I don't need to find it. It will find me. And that's through the nudges of desire, enjoyment, passion, and all of that comes together in recognizing purpose, and the path finds us.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this has been for me. I mean, I
Yeah.
love filmmaking. I love, so I get to do what I love every day.
Yeah.
And I love talking to you guys
Mhm.
about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest joy for me is, again, in the car ride or whatever to the airport, talking to people, having the conversations. I know when you were here, we had some great, while we were doing the interview, we
Yeah.
had some great exchanges on ideas and all
Yeah.
that. I love that. So
Yeah.
I couldn't, I couldn't have designed it better for me
Yeah.
personally. And yet I feel like I'm fulfilling a bigger role, a bigger purpose with this.
Absolutely. So I know that you have a clip that you would like to introduce to the viewers. I have not, for the viewers, I have not seen this clip, so I don't know what's going to be displayed. Um, and I'm very curious and excited to see it. And I'm also very curious and excited to see what the other individuals who participated in this have to say. There are some people with incredible messages and stories to bring back and gifts of wisdom. And I'm, really humbled, in all honesty, that I could participate in this, because there's some stories that are just, the wealth of wisdom that they bring back is otherworldly and so divine. And I have to keep myself from falling into comparison, because when I do fall into that, my ego is like, why am I involved in this? Like, there wasn't that, I try to minimize my experience to some degree, but what I can say personally, speaking of my experience, is my experience was what I needed to better understand my purpose, my divinity, why it is I am here, and also has allowed me to remain grounded and connected spiritually to something that is greater than myself, which has allowed me to transmute and alchemically move through some energies that I contractually chose to be born into. So allow me to become a pattern interrupt and move through these energies in a way that I wouldn't have been able to, I think, without this experience. And it is that blueprint of my own life that allows me to support others and be of service to others through my coaching, my transcendental coaching and oneness work. And it's what my clients are moving through and watching them work through at such a high level that allows me to recognize, shit, this all came together for this. Like, this is the path. And um and so yeah, it's meaningful for me.
You, my dear, are a beautiful light,
No,
and
thanks.
you've earned your place. You've earned your place in this film, and you're just getting started in
Mhm.
terms of what your contribution is going to be.
Thank you.
So you really touched me. I told you that when you were here,
Mhm.
you know, and there's not much more to say, but we have to feel worthy of the purpose, right? And this goes back to the worthiness thing. We got to do that healing work because, you know, for most of my life, I would have said, well, I don't have anything to offer the world. You know, I'm selfish. I'm this. I'm the home, you know, Course in Miracles. You think you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. You know, I saw myself, and people, you know, religions tell us you're sinners and you're not worthy of God's love and all that. You know, if we believe that, we're not going to say, "What's my purpose?" So you got to do the inner work. You got to do the healing. You know, fall in love with yourself. You know, love yourself. You know, there's a book. So Anita Morjani, who's in the film, she had a near-death experience. She said what she had to do was learn to love herself as if her life depended on it,
Mm,
because our life does depend on it.
yeah.
She developed cancer basically because of her denial of herself, self-hatred, all of that.
Mm,
Somebody actually ended up writing a book. I don't know if he wrote it because he heard Anita say it, but there is a book out there called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And it's a good book. I recommend that. It's about self-love.
mhm,
But I think she coined the phrase. And without, here's the point, without that self-love,
mhm,
self-compassion, self-acceptance, it's going to be really difficult to
mhm.
have a positive impact on the world and
Absolutely.
to pursue your purpose.
And you're living with such resistance. When you're in that state of constant resistance within the self, of course there's a manifestation. Of course it shows up externally, and of course that your body reflects it internally through inflammation and whatever illnesses and disease that is developed. And we're seeing that more and more people coming forth from Ayurvedic traditions and holistic traditions that are talking about these manifestations that occur through the internal resistance that is a byproduct of the lack of self-love. And I would like to actually catch myself. There's not a lack of self-love. There's an abundance of self-love. It's just removing the resistance and allowing yourself to fall into it. And in my personal opinion, the inner work has been one of the most beautiful blueprints on allowing a person to recognize that self love. And what we were just talking about in finding divinity in the small moments, whether that's an interaction, a brief interaction, or a decade long relationship, it is those in our external environments that are reflecting ourselves back to us. And they could be reflecting something that we like or something that we don't like. But those are moments for us to go internally within ourselves with curiosity, compassion, and really explore that further rather than taking the mirror's reflection at face value. And, when we can sit in a space of gratitude for these micro interactions that happen, thousands of times throughout the day, like then we start to see the divinity of life and how beautiful it actually is. Synchronicities start to show up, and we really start to recognize how connected we are to everyone around us. Talk about the solution to loneliness. What an incredible gift that, like, I know I'm connected to these people that don't even know my name, and I love them. I truly, truly, truly love them. Even if you're of a different religion, culture, background, even in today's polarized political sphere that, is the inauguration is tomorrow or today, even in that realm, I can look at my neighbor and say, I love you.
You should write a book.
Yeah. I keep hearing this.
All right, let's show the clip
Yeah.
because we only have a few minutes, right?
Absolutely.
At the age of 7, Lelanea Fulton had a near-death experience while swimming at a local lake. At the last minute, she was rescued by a mysterious woman who then disappeared.
On this particular day, I felt rather courageous. There was another girl about my age, about my height, and she was jumping off of the deeper end of the dock. I saw her do this a number of times, and I thought to myself, well, if she can do it, I can do it. However, I didn't take into account that she knew how to swim, and the maximum experience I had really pertaining to swimming was doggy paddling. And this was my introduction to death. So after diving in, what I didn't take account of was that on this particular side of the dock, the water was much deeper. I began to spend more time at the bottom of this lake. I'm recognizing that I don't have enough air. I'm recognizing at this point that I'm drowning. There's children playing everywhere. No one can see me. My mother can't see me. No one knows what I'm going through, that I'm literally drowning. Time starts to slow down, almost collapse on itself. Things become very still for me. I remember the calmness that came over me. I surrendered to the concept of dying and being okay with it. However, I was still able to feel my mother. I could feel my mother's presence sitting on the blanket. And I could even see my mother, even though I was below the water. And I hear her yelling my name, not audibly, but I hear her yelling for me. And I can even feel the panic. And it's at this point that I hear a voice, not audibly, but telepathically. It is a voice that asks me, "What would you like to do?" My response is, and there's a feeling, and there's this moment of recognizing I have a choice. There is a part of me that is very okay with transitioning out. But when I hear the voice ask, "What would you like to do?" I recognize feeling my mom's energy, that she wouldn't understand and that it would kill her. It would destroy her if she lost her child. It is in this moment that I began to see the body of an adult moving towards me. And I see a beautiful white bathing suit. And the bathing suit is old, similar to like the Marilyn Monroe era. And she has a beautiful long braid that hung down her back. And I could see the ends of the braid moving and swaying as she was moving towards me. And as the body approaches me, I'm picked up and pulled out of the water. Simultaneously, I can see my mother catching sight of me being lifted out of the water and into her arms. That's when my first breath comes. And the breath is painful. It is like bricks just dropping onto my chest. I can feel the woman's body who's holding me against her chest. I feel her, but I can't see her face. I should be able to see her face, but I can't see her face. And my mother comes running, and she's running so fast that it's almost as though she's running on water. And I feel my mother pick my body up out of this woman's arms and rush me back to the shore. And she puts me on the blanket, and I'm expelling water, and I'm coming back to my senses. And that feeling of love and bliss and joy that I was surrendering to is now fear. It's cold, it's shaking, it's panic, it's crying. My mom always put our blanket down next to the lifeguard. And there was a lifeguard on an elevated lifeguard stand. And the lifeguard didn't see anything. He didn't witness anything. He didn't see anything. My mom wants to find the woman to thank her. And, it's been 15, 20 minutes and no one's approached the blanket. No one has come up and been like, is your daughter okay? We saw the whole thing. And so my mother begins to approach the different groups of families and their blankets. No one had seen her. No one had seen this woman at all. This woman didn't come with anybody. And then my mom's like, well, has anyone left? And no one had seen anyone leave. It was such a bizarre scenario. No one had any information of this woman who just saved my life and pulled me out of the water. And so she couldn't be found. We never did find her. People have asked me, is this a guardian angel or do you feel like this is a guide? What feels the most true and the most honest is that she feels like me. She feels like my future self, as if, my 55, 60-year-old self came back to pull her out of the water. There is just such a profound feeling of feeling like I know her and feeling like I know her because she is me.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's so wild to watch myself talk about that. Because I go back into that moment. And something that you mentioned earlier is your intuition speaks to you. And it'll say, now it's time for you to write that book. My intuition is audible as well. My intuition is not first person. My intuition is definitely a telepathic voice, and it always prefaces what it has to say with saying Lelanea. And when I was in that drowning experience, that telepathic voice that asked what I wanted to do was speaking to me. It wasn't something that was coming out of me or up through me. And I think it's incredible when we get to the point of sensitivity that our intuition becomes audible and we recognize that we're not alone, that there are other entities or beings that are working alongside of us to support us in whatever it is that we feel we need to do in this particular incarnate. So, of all these NDEs that you've done, what's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself and that you've taken away from them?
Well, it is this notion, that we are eternal. We are spiritual beings. We are eternal spiritual beings. We've lived many lives. We're living many lives, actually, because there is no such thing as past or future lives. Time is sequentaneous, as they say, simultaneous in sequence. And it's all okay. Whatever we seem to suffer in this life, there's no permanent loss or damage to the soul. In a lot of ways, this is, you could say recreation, but it's also recreation. There is an opportunity to have some fun with all of this, not take life so seriously, and I believe we come here, the soul comes to the physical plane to know itself in its own experience. Now, we could do a whole podcast on that, but the gist of it is that we are here by choice. We came with a purpose, and there is something about this experience that we don't have on the other side, right? And it's related to contrast, to duality. In order to know ourselves as light, we have to experience darkness. In order to know good, we have to experience evil. And this is by choice. And like I said, there's no permanent damage, loss. And we're all kind of playing roles. If all our lives are lived simultaneously, then I'm living lives right now as probably part of the darkness in some incarnation, in some form. We hear a lot about reptilians and all that, and the cabal government and all that other stuff. If this is true, and even if I haven't lived that specific experience, if I'm one with everyone and everything, then I'm one with those reptilians, as much as anything. So it's looking at the bigger picture, and then embracing the opportunity. You know, this is where we come to know ourselves as who and what we really are. On the other side, again, we can know that, but we can't experience it. The example that I use is on the other side, it's like reading the book about riding the bicycle. On this side, it's not only do we ride the bicycle, but we fall off and we scrape our knees. And not only do we fall off and scrape our knees, but all our friends are laughing at us. We're here for the full experience of that. And Source doesn't really differentiate between good or bad. It's all just experience, right? And the last thing I'll do is I'll point people to Mayor Baba's book called God Speaks.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go further than the dedication page, the first page, the dedication. He dedicates the book to the universe, the physical universe, the illusion that sustains the reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we need the duality, we need the darkness in order to know ourselves as light.
Absolutely. So the human experience is very much about duality, but the higher experience beyond that is recognizing that duality is an illusion. And so that's the different dimensions that we're toggling between. How do I use duality to support me in recognizing oneness? You know, and it's this really beautiful toggle back and forth between human experience and soulful experience, human experience and soulful experience. It's a really gorgeous dance.
And your description of oneness, you didn't see it in the clip because the clip would just be too long.
Mm-hmm.
But your description of oneness, that was why I initially reached out to you, was that
Mm-hmm.
that description was so poignant. And you can see it, and go to the full interview
Mm-hmm.
on the website, everysoulknows.com, or go to the YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
watch Lelanea's interview, because you described that experience of oneness so poignantly,
Mm-hmm.
so powerfully, you know, and that's why we're here, is to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, the subtitle of the film, the title is What Every Soul Knows. The subtitle is The Joy of Remembering Who We Really Are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my belief that the greatest joy that the soul can experience in this lifetime, or probably any lifetime, is when we remember who and what we really are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When the veil finally falls away.
Mm-hmm.
Because until then, any joy that we might experience is all temporary, temporal.
Mm-hmm.
It's all based on worldly experience.
Yeah.
When the veil falls away and we remember who and what we really are,
Mm-hmm.
that has to be the moment, you know, doesn't get any better than that.
No, it doesn't. And these joys and blissful experiences that we experience in the material world are just these little artificial jolts. They really, there's nothing, they can't even touch the richness and the texture of having that love that comes from that soulful experience of oneness, when we actually remember who we are and what we're connected to. It is it is so difficult for me to try to articulate it because there really aren't words for it. However, I do try to find words for it in the longer version of the clip. So again, if you're intrigued and you'd like to learn more about my experience, or about the experience of others, or just about the movie itself, then all of the information and details can be found in the show notes to support you in learning more about Peter, access to Peter's book. Also, Peter has he's a TED Talk, invitee, a TED Talk speaker, and also divulges a great deal of wisdom through that as well. So all of those links will be in the show notes. Peter, I am so grateful for the time that you have poured into this, for your work, your creativity, but most importantly, like, what I tend to gravitate towards and have such deep appreciation is listening to your experience of self-growth and self-love that's developed in all of these areas of you experiencing yourself, and then how you're being of service and sharing that blueprint of growth and experience, and then even what it is that you've learned about yourself, the wisdom, back into others that come in contact with you. And I really truly recognize how you're of service to others and those around you, and the love that you're pouring into yourself, you equally pour into others, and have so much gratitude that I got to meet you and co-create with you and share my experience and my story with you, and then again continue our relationship rippling out into the world. So thank you for being you.
You're welcome. And thank you for being you.
Mm. So I just want to check in and make sure you're feeling complete, or if there's anything that's coming back up in you that you'd really like to express before we end the show.
No, I think I'm good, but I do look forward to seeing you again. So hopefully we'll have, I'm hoping to get everybody together for a premiere when the film is finally finished. And I do also see a possibility for doing something like, what Every Soul Knows retreats, workshops, where people can come to a location for a week and you guys can all teach and mentor and do all that stuff in person.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant idea. And I think that there would be a lot of people that would be attracted to having that experience. And I know, Betty Guadaniel is also someone you've interviewed, and someone that I've had on the podcast. And she's just such a wealth of information pertaining to her experience and her love for life. And it is so contagious. And I feel like, people who wouldn't want to learn from such people as Betty and have experiences through her. So, yeah, I think that's an incredible idea, and I would love to be a part of that.
I'll keep you posted.
Awesome. Peter, it was such a pleasure to have you. I'm so excited that I got to have this time and share space with you in this way. And thank you for showing me that video. It definitely took me back into our time together, and then also into my experience. So thank you for that gentle reminder.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, my dear. See ya.
Au revoir.